Brilliant. So welcome everyone to this Moormaid Press event to celebrate Laura Davis's new pamphlet, Have Needle Will. Hot off the press and available from Moormaid Press, and I will be putting the link in the chat, no doubt more than once. So that's how you secure your copy. The event will take about an hour, and it'll include readings from Jules, Sprake, Beverly, Frydman, and of course from Laura herself. There'll also be the opportunity to ask Laura a few questions about the pamphlet and in general about her practice. So if you think of a question, pop it in the chat, and when we get to that, I'll pick some of those up. Just a reminder, please, to keep your mics off. I think everyone is doing that anyway, but just a reminder so that we don't interrupt the speakers. So let's go. I'm going to introduce Jules Sprake first. Jules makes wonderful printed things using methods I don't understand. And she also writes great poetry, which takes us on unexpected journeys. She recently published Shrink a Crisp Packet. That's actually quite difficult to say. Shrink a Crisp Packet with Moormaid Press. And we're thrilled to have her with us this evening. So Jules, you are up first.
Thank you very much, Ailsa. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here. Thank you. Here's Momo as well. She has probably more to say that's relevant than I do, but there we go. I will just share my screen because I have some images to show you. There we go. Yeah, I know I'm screen sharing. I just can't. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, let's just get rid of that. Okay, so do let me know if there's any problems seeing anything. There are 25 double-page spreads in Shrink a Crisp Packet. I'm going to just offer a few of those tonight. If you fancy buying a copy, that would be lovely. They're £8 each. I'm sure Ailsa will find a link somewhere and put it somewhere. And this came out in March of this year. So without further ado, okay. Is the sound of me shuffling through my own book because I'm not going to disturb the cat. Right, the first one. Unseparate. Wood stockpiled, fierce burning collateral for making ash. Move on, get on, as you do, as we must. To live until ash. Particles swirling as dust, we percolate with rainwater and leach. Phosphate powder, but not all that remains is bone. Ash flicks linger. She clings to my fingertips. I just start with a really happy one there. And moving on to weeds. Weed 3, Lactuca virosa, or wild lettuce, Casper tells me. The milk is good for pain. It makes you sleep better. He hasn't been sleeping well. His leg is painful. I break a stem. Lactucarium woozes. It's rush hour in Southwark Park. Traffic toxicates these tinctures behind the container sheds. I hear the leaf go limp. Weed 4, Sonchus oeraceus. Contaminants invade this pub wall. Cover up paint, peels, tiles, teapot brown, blighted. The pub looks tired, and I can see chairs on tables. Once flagged in white with a red cross, rosettes of spiny leaves now host this so-called dying breed. Home fans only. Pigeon alert. A line between paving slabs nudges up. Seeds germinate in mini hedgerows. Borders of green mortar mark the colonization. Their parent towers, classified native, over 5 stories high. A man comes along with the Sainsbury's bag for life and looks down. The P13 bus coming this way meets another P13 coming the other way. Look up, hello. Further along, there's a bag not for life hanging on a shrub. It's windy, and 3 human forest bicycles have blown over. Shop window. Mannequins line up. Made hairless, these styrene scalps stare back. Nylon fringes them stiff. Please don't ruffle or stroke my hair as though it was attached. Knots would cry out, tugged with threats of a pageboy cut. Instead, make my face heart-shaped with synthetic fronds, unable to feel rollers spiked to burn curls into a girl. Prickling, I remember. Nostalgia. Build a multi-story from licorice all sorts. Freeze rockets in orange squash. Crush chocolate limes into space dust. Shrink a crisp packet to golden wonder. Suck on a traffic light. This will make you feel better. And lastly, 35mm slide viewer. The lens in this viewer is made of lucite plastic. This viewer makes. Chosen particularly for its precise, this viewer chooses. Optical quality and very high light transmission. This viewer highlights. When cleaning this lens, breathe on its surface. This viewer breathes. Then wipe lightly with a small bit of cotton. This viewer cleans what happened. Thank you.
Thanks, Jules. That was so lovely, and lovely to see your images as well.
Thank you very much.
So next I'm going to introduce Beverly Frydman. Beverly is here somewhere. She's an overly self-deprecating writer whose work makes us laugh and cry. I'm just saying that, so, you know, she remembers. Moormaid Press recently published Time Cracks, the pamphlet that she wrote with her longtime collaborator, Rochelle Robshaw, and some of you might have been here for the launch of that. Tonight, she's reading from her solo work, and I'm really looking forward to hearing it. Over to you, Bev.
Hi, everybody. I think I'm not going to do the crying tonight because I read through some and I thought I'd leave those out. So I'm going to read you a few poems. And just to say also, congratulations to Laura on a brilliant collection, which is wonderful to look at and to read. And Moormaid Press is on fire. So the first one I'm going to read is called Guru. The guru floats down Holland Park Avenue. He stops in front of me. He wears white robes and sandals. I wear yoga pants, but I'm not going to yoga. The guru catches my eye. I want my eye back. He says, not until you pay attention to your digestion. I only eat dairy lunches in summer. I belch cottage cheese. The guru takes my tongue and puts it in his pocket. In my head, I say, my grandparents ate sour cream with cucumbers and scallions for cool. They ate peaches and cream for sweet. The guru hears my thoughts. He pats his stomach. He says, stop. Eating nostalgia is making you dyspeptic. My belly is a screaming helium balloon. The guru hands me a marigold along with my tongue and eye. The marigold smells like cat pee, but tastes of spicy orange. He says, this will cleanse your gut, but not your memory. He puts his hands in prayer. I offer him my hand. He says he already has two and waves goodbye. The next one is a version of my childhood. I grew up outside New York City in the 60s and 70s, and this is an imagining. It's called Suburban Childhood. My house is a cornflakes box in the cereal aisle of the ShopRite. Every morning, a rooster wakes us up and makes breakfast. I have toast and raspberry jam. My brothers inhale Count Chocula and Cocoa Pops. Dad drinks Sanka and smokes Lucky Strikes. Mom wears a ricicle ring and packs lunch boxes with alphabets to help our spelling. We pour out the front door to wait for the school bus. It's almost summer and Fruit Loops grow on trees. We're the first stop, and then we pick up Naomi, the milkman's daughter. She has long white hair and brings mini milk cartons for snack in a wire crate. She eats fluff and udder sandwiches and lives in a house made of Cheerios. Her next door neighbor is Andrea, whose house is a Quaker Oats package. She wears itchy wool sweaters and never stops crying. Last stop is my best friend Kara's. She lives in a pink Pop-Tart apartment and has a strawberry birthmark. Her father walks her and her sister to the bus and says, "I'm surrounded by women." Kara and I sit in the back of the bus, throwing pink jelly beans in the air, catching them in our mouths. As we pull into the school parking lot, it starts to rain Rice Krispies. We jump off the bus into puddles of Snap, Crackle, Pop. And the last one I'm going to read is a walking poem, because I often write those. And I think poetry is sort of slamming at least two things together. And for me, it's, I don't know, it's usually where I am and where I've been or things that I imagine. And I was walking in April, and it was a full moon, and the April full moon is pink. Every full moon has a name. So the April full moon is pink. So this poem is called April Full Moon. Last night's moon was pink, but it looks like any other. Named to honor spring flowers. Nothing to do with color. I trudged through shepherd's bush petals, stamp rhododendron blossoms into cracks, leave my signature trainer tracks. I hear pink's a healing color, but red has always been my armor. Rub crabapple flowers between finger and thumb. I prefer some cherry plum, a deeper stain like ruby woo, blotted lipstick on a folded tissue, thrown into a swirling loo. Memories of monthly blood and water, full moon's blessing to her daughters, the smell of vanilla essence meant to help with self-acceptance. Chew a handful, have a go, swallow pink, go with the flow. And I have one last one, and it's inspired by a prompt from our lovely Siley Gore, who a lot of us know from the Papa Grew Collective, and it was about libraries and light. So this is called Shepherd's Bush Library. At first, I thought the smell was body odor or fungus, but now I know it's what thinking smells like. In a world of fingers on keyboards, backpacks unzipping, water sipping, black-clad students absorb all the light. To view the street, look through a panel of blue perspex. It does not make red buses purple, just turns the whole world blurry, which doesn't matter much. The sun has not appeared for months, wrapped up in clouds, deciding what to do. Am I the only one in here who wears a watch? The ticking is loud, but just for me. Everyone else is plugged in, their faces lit by screens. I am the first to leave. Scrape my chair back, try not to take in too much air, leave some of myself in the atmosphere. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations, Laura.
Thank you, Bev. That was wonderful. So now we're coming to the main event of the evening, Laura Davis. Laura is a poet of words and textiles, whose work has been published by journals in print and online and exhibited at the Green Door Gallery in Brussels. Her debut collection, Found and Lost, was published by Kingston University Press. It's been fabulous working with her on this pamphlet, and I'm thrilled we are now launching it out into the world. There'll be a short Q&A after this reading, so if questions occur to you, please put them in the chat box. Laura, the Zoom floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ailsa. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And, thank you, Jules and Bev. What a fantastic reading. So thank you so much. I'm going to start with a couple of word poems and then show some textile poems. And I'm going to start with the oldest poem, I think, in the book, Trade Winds. Builders are drilling again. I walk to the cafe with kumquat trees. The barista suggests something new. Voices ebb around me. Some I understand. We lone regulars nod, half greet, retreat to our smartphones. Here, I can pass, almost fit in. Out in the open, my nerves tighten for, wait, stop, you there! And the boys with guns, the girl on the bike, the women with prams, the man with the dog will turn and stare at the outsider, revealed, reviled, and chase me back to my kind, who migrate like birds, obeying unknown seasons, a pattern of postings following modern trade winds, cuckoo roosting in nests ornate with objects gathered in foreign parts by keepsakes from half-remembered homes. I will move on when the wind changes, maybe to that place I still call home. My bag's heavier, another space between me and my roots. I think I can still play the part, carefully mind, for fear the perennial imposter is unmasked. In my next piece is part of a crown of sonnets, so a collection of interlocking sonnets in the middle of the book. So I'm going to read the first three and then show some textiles and then come back to the last three, leaving you in suspense about what happens in the middle. Right, yarn twists. I wander along the banks of the Thames. At Cleopatra's Needle, the obelisk, I wonder whether archaeologists considered Trajan's toothpick as a name or anything domestic or mundane for the monuments men put up to him, other generals, and their heroism. Perhaps Cleopatra would not complain. I'd like to think she would just grin slyly. It makes a change from the coal-eyed siren, oriental seductress, anything but a grade A empress with a knack for strategic expansion. A kick-ass queen is so much less imposing if you imagine her bent over some sewing. I'm on a seawall in the evening. Breathe. I raise my arms to open up my chest. Invoke Susanna, I release the stress from work, from home, from life. Inhale the beach. Abruptly, I am felled by stabbing pain. I bend and press into my trunk. I know the stitch will pass if I regain my flow and touch my toes to stretch my diaphragm. The thread the needle pose should also work. I don't. I sit and let the aching pass. It's not the stitch that hurts. It's the surprise that loneliness seeps into me so fast. Enough. I scrunch the sand between my toes, then grit my teeth and turn to head back home. I picture Grandma bent over, showing me how to French knot or couch or conjure lazy daisies onto a linen scrap. In July, after a morning spent blackberrying, I will scroll back to find her recipe, smirched, Smurf blue, WhatsApp by Mum. Notes in Gran's pre-arthritis curly hand read clearly through the blurry scan. I stir imperial quantities of brambles, sugar, lemon pips at a rolling boil, reflect on how, although she travelled only by radio, she would understand my wunderlust, cut in part, as we are, from the same cloth. Now I'd like to share my screen. And so three textile poems from the book. So the first is Obelisk I Rise. And this is taken with text from Yarn Twists. So when the sonnets are printed in sequence, I took some sticks or phrases from the seam between the two. And this is, so this is where the text comes from here. I've called them seam sticks. And they are presented on linen. It's all household linen. So the top piece is from an old linen dress of my mother, and the bottom is from my daughter's jeans, old jeans. And then there's some Congolese cloth from memory of time spent there. And the text is put on with cyanotype, which uses light, and then stitches added to the top. So I won't read the text, but this is one of the textile poems. The second poem also uses text from Yarn Twists. This time I used a different method. So I made some paper, including torn up threads of the sonnet sequence, and just to see what would arise, what text would find itself in this process. So it's paper made from autumn leaves and the text of the sonnets, with some more autumn leaves, and then red and gold thread added, and some of these phrases that came out, Herb's pick, just a vulgarity, highlighted in stitch. And the third of the poems I'd like to show is a bit of a different work. During lockdown, like many people, I found that I actually found it really hard to read, but I started listening to books, and I got very hooked on the 19th century classics of English literature, which I'd never read before, and particularly The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. And this is when I was still living in Uganda, and it had a very strong resonance for me in many of its themes. And this is part of a bigger collection of work which works with the book, and actually with the physical book itself. So here you can see, again, it's still my mother's old dress in the background, and then a bit of an old bedsheet. This has echo prints on it now of autumn leaves, and a transfer on the right-hand side of the page of Return of the Native with a print, a photo of St Pancras Station on the right-hand side, overlaid in part in stitch, and a transfer on the other side. And then extra text from the book in both just torn pages, but also in the bottom right-hand side, kneaded pages. So this follows a Japanese practice called momigami, which is when you knead the paper with your hands, and the transfer of sort of oil and sweat and everything else that's in your hands into the paper changes the nature of it. And so this is also something that I'm very interested in textile poetry. Is also, my DNA goes into it. So it's the sweat and the oil and pinpricks, because I'm not a very accurate stitcher. So there's some blood in there as well, and also anyone else who touches it. So it's the sort of the touch of a textile poem as well, which I appreciate is not easily transmissible by Zoom. Yeah, so these are some examples of the textile poems in the book, and now I'd like to continue with the closing 3 sonnets from the sequence in the middle of Yarn Twists. Tingling senses, as shades around us thicken to velvet nightfall that almost smothers us, fuel our dreams as we rock in twin hammocks under southern constellations, whipping light across unknowable darkness, and spin our yarn. The twist and turn form the tale that moves with us through time and space, moves us on to each new place, where disaster is recent or imminent or dormant. I think about mountain ranges, deserts and forests, but it's the great rivers, the Nile, Niger, Congo, that bring calm, connect me to that younger me whose itchy feet wandered along the banks of the Thames. From different perspectives, a shared story might be summoned with an incantation. Herbs picked at lunch in a moonlit basin, with jest of toad and heifer's glory, vulgarity of newt, savings of sow, stirred by a runner who's just been racing, then left on a set on a sill, north-facing, in a basket made from wine-soaked willow. Or I can close my eyes and trace red thread back through the labyrinth of my memory, turning away from dead ends and regrets, finding my way back to the times when we fantasized about living overseas on a seawall in the evening breeze. Eyes closed, red thread traces French knot, couches and lazy daisies. Anything domestic or mundane keeps us still for far too long. Embroidered, untrustworthy, embellished and patched, our yarn twists forms the tale. Others work into the weave, gathering the threads, building rich tapestries of lives, not general heroism, artful, crafty. And then the last poem I'd like to read now is called Cross-Stitch Sestina. She sits, tilts towards the light, still, except for her hands. They force her needle back and forth, dragging threads, making stories without words. Judith, Esther, another biblical woman, of songless birds, symbolic flowers, imagined like pomegranate flowers twining through snow, Mary and lilies, tall and still, a symbolic bud for the child and bloom for the woman, duty and fertility pricked out by a needle, depicted as nature, but truly men's fabricated world, drawn in silk and cotton, and occasionally gold thread. Underpinning all this work with thread, she should while away hours reproducing flowers and birds instead of reading subversive words. Keep women decorative, quiet and still. It worked to a point. Can you brandish a needle? Can a needle wielder be a swordswoman? Did she dream of Judith's heroic or Esther's? The woman bored in her parlour, drilling severed heads in silken thread, as her often pricked fingers bled into the linen where the needle pierced her, bloodstains blooming between the satin-stitched flowers, before being washed away to leave no trace on a seemingly still, pure cloth where someone else's patterns stand for her words. We cannot read stitches as though they were words or imagine the motives of a long-dead needlewoman, whose mind is long gone, but whose work survives still. Through the lens of our times, we peer for threads to unpick the secrets she encoded in flowers, wishing she'd had a pen as well as a needle. Whitstable women now embroider profanities that needle the craft word, crude words in running and cross-stitch, fuck-offs over flowers, calls to arms for every woman to scream, to swear out loud, and also in thread, if that's what she wants, because no one bloody listens. Still, from flowers to V signs, the thin shaft of a needle still casts light's expressions in the shadows of words, linking far-flung women with spider-strung thread. Thank you.
Oh, that was wonderful, Laura. And thank you so much for showing us a few of the textile poems as well. It just really gives everybody a bit of a sense of how beautiful the book is visually as well as wordily. That's not a word, but there we are. Okay, so we're going to start a short Q&A with a question from Vicky. I'm so amazed by the seamless, I like what you did there, Vicky, seamless blend of text and texture. Laura, how did you reach this position of working back and forth between these languages?
Thank you very much, Vicky. It's a question I've been grappling with. I'm not sure I know the answer. Part of the answer, at least, is that, as you know, and as was mentioned, I think earlier, as I'm part of the Pop Group Collective, and it's very nice to see many of you here, which is an incredibly supportive group. So basically, enables me to experiment. And I think one of the things I found was that having spent certainly a lot of my professional life and having to try and make language as tight as possible and as uninterpretable as possible, to actually find ways to move beyond that and to express more of my whole self. And I think also, particularly with textile, one of the things that's very interesting is the ability to express the things I can't articulate, and maybe also the things which are unsayable. So I find these experiments with language extremely interesting, and you know what they reveal. And I suppose another part of it is also that live now in Belgium. I'm British by upbringing, and I've spent the last 10 years living in Africa and the Middle East. So I've spent a long time living between languages, and that space between languages, some of which I understand well, some of which I don't understand at all, and some of which I think I understand, but probably not as well as I actually do. That space between language is a place that I find is really, really interesting. So it's a combination of it's been a personal journey, but it's been one that has been extremely heavily supported by many people, including the Pop Crew Collective. You're mute, Ailsa.
Thank you. So here's a question from Susie. Women feature throughout your poems, particularly women in myth, but also more personal connections. Are you consciously positioning your work in a tradition of women's art and work? And is that important to you?
Thank you, Susie. Yes, I do actually. Yes, I think that when I was at college, and it's lovely to see some college friends here. So Angela, Laura, thank you very much for coming. I was at a women's college, and yeah, you know, the 1990s, apparently we were going to get it all. Well, guess we didn't. And I think so it's partly about, it is also partly about expressing women's voice through language, of course. But I think one of the things that has been really powerful as I've become as I've come to get to know textile work and textile poetry, including, of course, yours, Susie, very much so, is also that the long history that textile work has as a space both for oppression of women and women's voices, and that continues today, and women's bodies, particularly in sweatshops and so forth. But it has also been a site of women's resistance, women's expression, and so I very much enjoy that, and I enjoy being in that sort of community over time. So my grandmother taught me to embroider when I was a child, and I consciously rejected that because I thought it was, as I got older, because I thought it was too sort of girly and feminine and so on. And now I come back to it with a much more feminist approach. That's the space that I want to engage, and I want to continue that tradition of a woman's space of, you know, expression and creativity.
Thank you. Bean asks, can you describe your process of stitching a poem? Where does it start?
I think it's I start with layers often. Start by stitching together pieces of cloth or paper and cloth, and see where it takes me. I think one of the things that I find really interesting about working with textiles is that all of the drafts are in the layers, so you can keep going and you can keep going, but you're always going forward. So even if you take out stitches, for example, is that you leave the holes, they don't go away. So it's not like, you know, deleting a Word document or deleting the text in a Word document. And so I find it's a process that I start and I have some kind of idea about what I want to do, but I don't have an idea how it will work out. And so as I build up some of the layers and then take some of the layers away, that's how it works. So I think it's a very interesting process. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't work at all, and you've just got a horrid mess, and you have to throw it away. But I think it is. I find it a very different creative process from writing, and I enjoy combining them, especially then when, say, say language is revealed through either stripping away or adding text or paper, scraps, or so forth. I'm afraid it's not a very coherent answer, but it's a very embodied practice, actually, and it's just something that it kind of feels right in the moment. And having that touch and holding the work in your hands and carrying it with you is for me a very important part of my process. And I work in, like many people here, I work in quite small scale, and it's always been because well, it started because I was living abroad. Everything had to be portable, and it's all domestic found cloth, and you know, just sort of took it from there. So I haven't ever felt any need to go bigger, for example. Thank you.
Lovely. And a question from Maria, which you may have slightly just answered, but I think we can, because there's something I want to know as well. So, so she writes, given your travel and the family links through your fabrics, I wonder if you carry your fabrics with you or whether you create at home. And I wanted to kind of add to that tension in the, which is in the pamphlet, I think, between this very domestic, supposedly domestic activity and the countries and the continents that the travel spans. So yeah, maybe you can say something about that.
No, thank you. And should say my family are here, so it's very nice to see them. But the in the other room, yeah, no, I work entirely at home, and I always have. But home is a very it's a very peripatetic place. So you know, I've moved around a lot, and so I think it doesn't become a yeah, I mean, it's a series of homes. I find it very, very difficult to explain. And yeah, so I think it's that. Sorry, I'm expressing this extremely poorly. I think it is about carrying that home with me where I go. I know others here are also people who are sort of rather constantly on the move, and perhaps share some of that. And so it's a question of, you know, what you take with you each time, and also what you leave behind. So it's that, and quite a lot of it is embedded in the fabric. So I have collected quite a lot of African cloth, which I like to work with, as well as our sort of clothing, and also picking up a lot of influences along the way. So so basket weaving, for example, which was also very big in Central Africa. I lived in Congo and Uganda, and embroidery practice from the Middle East. So there's a lot of different influences there that I like to carry through my work.
That's lovely. Thank you. I think I've got all the questions. So I just thought it would be really nice to finish with another poem from you. So we end on a poem. I think that might become a Moormaid thing, to have a Q&A, but to end on a poem. Because Moormaid is also an evolving what's it. So yeah, would you like to read us something?
Love to. And first of all, I'd like to thank you very much, Ailsa, for bringing this pamphlet to life in so many ways. And it is a very different pamphlet than how it started. So I've so much appreciated working with you and your input into it, and you know, our collaboration on it, and also for this. So thank you all very much indeed for coming. And also, of course, particularly to Jules and Bev for your wonderful readings. So I'd like to close with a short poem, Seeking Persephone. The sky fades to furnace scarlet and steel, Hecate's time, between sun and moon. A commonplace bird flits across the field, starlings muster, singly at first. A bird ball fires from the misty hillside, gathers mass, explodes, swirling, pulsating, ripping through dusk, whipping for a fraction of a second into her form. Arms raised first in defense, thrashing into defiance, her shriek shattering to whirring grey wings, beating the hedgerow, seeking out roosts and skeletal branches, remnants of copses cleared for cattle and crops, until the birds settle and darkness falls still.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming and helping us celebrate this wonderful pamphlet. And do grab a copy. I've put the link a few times in the chat, so I'm sure you can find it. And there's so much to read and ponder on, but also just so much beautiful stuff to look at. So yeah, I hope you read and gaze and enjoy. And thanks for joining us, and hope to see you at a Moormaid thing again soon. We really love doing these Moormaid launches now, so I'm sure they'll be happening again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.